It's time to count down the top 5 defensive tackles. And we got a guy that's on this list that we just talked about on our prior show. So let's bring Brendan Albert back on. You got the graphics again, right?
Got the graphics again. Do a little school first, guys.
Got the graphics. All right. Yo, so here's what I want to talk about to start. So Myles Garrett is going to be our number 1 guy. You'll get the graphic on him, shortly. But let's say he wasn't like an edge player. Let's say he didn't play defensive end or 3-4 outside linebacker. Let's say he was strictly playing inside. How dominant do you think he could be, being like a 4-3 defensive tackle or a 3-4 defensive end?
Oh, very dominant. I mean, I look at all the success Fletcher Cox has had in that 4-3 defensive end or defensive tackle role, and I think it's easily something that, Myles Garrett could do. No different than if J.J. Watt was in a 4-3 and he was asked to play D-tackle. Yeah, he absolutely could be a 10-plus sack guy inside and probably 20-plus TFLs and a couple batted balls. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt he can be successful inside or outside.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And, this is kind of like last year. Last year I had Jalen Ramsey is my number 1 ranked cornerback, number 1 ranked safety. So a little bit like that. So, all right, here's what we'll do. We'll do the same thing as last show. I'll just quickly go through my top 5. Now, I had Solomon Thomas as an edge player, although he should have been inside, so he won't be in my top 5. But, all right, so here's my top 5 defensive tackles. I got, obviously, Myles Garrett, number 1, Jonathan Allen, number 2, Malik McDowell, number 3, Chris Wormley, number 4, and Caleb Brantley, number 5. And we'll kind of get into those guys in a little bit after you do your graphics that are so freaking cool.
Let's do it. All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen here, fellas. And then, Adrian, let me know, bud. Can you see my screen again?
Sure.
Okay. So, guys, kind of what I did in the last show, but I also want to do it here because I'm not 100% sure that you guys watch both. Hopefully you watch all of our stuff, but in case you don't, what I want to do here, guys, is, this time of the year, you're going to hear pro scouts or whoever your favorite NFL analyst is talking about, oh, this defensive lineman, he can play the 3-tech. Oh, this guy's a clear 0. This guy's a clear 5. Well, what I wanted to do here, guys, is I wanted to talk over real quick about what these different techniques are, what they're expected of each player, and how they vary based on your defensive scheme. Because unlike any other position in the NFL draft this upcoming year, guys, scheme for your defensive lineman and edge player is going to dictate where you get drafted more than anything. If you're a corner and you can play man coverage, every defense plays man coverage. But if you're, a 0 technique and you get drafted by a 4-3 team, you might not have a great deal of success. Anyway, let's kind of kick this off, guys. So let's talk here about a 3-4. So teams like the Baltimore Ravens, like what's inside the purple and black, also the Indianapolis Colts, Pittsburgh Steelers, tons and tons of teams run the 3-4. Okay, your 3-4, this is like a very basic 3-4. Typically, your nose guard's going to line up in a 0. Your ends are going to line up on the 4s, which will be head up on the tackles. Your outside backers, usually they're anywhere from like a 6. Maybe they'll screw down a little bit to be a 5 or a 7. And that's where we have our true edge rushers. Think about Terrell Suggs, how he kind of does it. And then our backers, your Will backer and your Mike backer, typically you're in a 20. And what I mean by that in a 20 is they're lined up on the 2, but if they're not necessarily on the line of scrimmage, like a Mike backer is usually about 4 to 6 yards off, he's going to be added a 0. So he's in a 20. So that's kind of how our 3-4 looks. Usually your nose guard, he's going to be a heavy guy who's pretty much just asked to eat blocks, not necessarily looking for him to make a lot of sacks. You're just asking him to command a double team from the center and the guard so one of your middle linebackers can run free. Your ends, usually you want these ends to be long-armed guys who can get a lot of pressure on one-on-ones or can at least use that long arms to help pin those tackles inside to allow your outside backers to come free. Okay. Now, when we go to the 4-3, i.e., got the Eagles colors here with that green and black. A lot of teams still running the 4-3. Detroit's another team running the 4-3. Miami's running the 4-3. A lot of 4-3 teams still in the NFL. We have what's here called a slide front, i.e., the defensive line is moving to the left. So when we look here with our ends are in a 50 technique, in the 5s, which means they are C-gap responsible for the run. Our D tackles, one's in a 2-eye, inside shade of that guard, going to be A-gap responsible. The other D tackle, he's probably going to be in a 3 or a 2, just outside shade of his guard to the B gap. And then we have our weak side backer in the 4-3. He's going to be in about a 70. Our middle backer or our Mike backer, he's probably in a 10, playing A gap responsible. And our Sam backer, he's going to be in a 30, B gap responsible for the run. So understanding this, guys, this is going to kind of give you a good idea for exactly why this is so important moving forward. So like I talked about with our edge players, Myles Garrett is my number one. I mean, Myles Garrett is scheme versatile. And what I did was I added the school's logos, and based on how the school's logo size is, that's where I think he's successful. If the school's logo is small, like I have Myles Garrett's logo small here in the 0, he can play this, but frankly, I don't think he'd excel here. And more importantly, I think it'd be very foolish for a team to make Myles Garrett play the 0. But Myles Garrett, scheme versatile. You know, I think he's probably in the NFL a traditional D end, but if he goes somehow to a 4-3 team, he could kick inside, become an interior rusher, and now you bring in another pass rusher off the edge. But Myles Garrett, he's scheme versatile. He's number 1 edge. He's number 1 interior. So let's just keep it moving. So my second guy here, I went out to the West Coast and I brought in Solomon Thomas. Now, Solomon Thomas is a stout, powerful dude. His problem, like I talked about with the edge guys, is he's not really a clear-cut perfection at one specific position. He's kind of a master of multiple traits. I think ultimately for Solomon Thomas, I think his thing he'll excel at is going to be a D tackle in a 4-3, especially because he put up those 30 reps on the bench press. He's obviously strong as an ox. Little shorter arms than you would like to be a D end in a 3-4, but definitely has the ability to do it. But I think his biggest value will be at the inside and a D tackle on a 4-3. He'll be a top 10 pick in my opinion. Now, the next guy I have, I threw in Superman, also known as Jonathan Allen, giving this sweet Superman sack on Adrian's boy, Trevor Knight. Okay.
Wow.
Now, one thing we talk about a lot with this draft, and I'm sure you've heard, is, man, we had a great D-line and a great edge draft. And that's definitely true. But we don't have a lot of guys who are really exceptional at the 0. Now, Jonathan Allen, I think he is an all-day outside defensive end in a 3-4. All day, I think that's where he plays. But could he come inside and play D-tackle in a 4-3? Absolutely. Could you ask him to go inside and play the 0? Yeah, he could. Now, typically, guys, you don't usually use a top 10 pick for someone whose job is to take up 2 blocks and not necessarily make tackles. So if a team drafts him, I don't expect Jonathan Allen to be playing the 0 technique. Usually you draft the 0 technique in later rounds because those are guys, with all due respect, are usually expendable. But Jonathan Allen, I think he's very, very good. Issues with Jonathan Allen, though, is a couple bit of medical issues, which unfortunately has become a common thing with players coming out of Alabama. Has some serious shoulder concern, which is a big, big issue for defensive linemen in the NFL. So that could be something to be, aware of. But his athleticism, his power, his athletic ability is through the roof. Let's keep in mind, guys, Jonathan Allen came in as a 250-pound outside backer to Alabama and put 35 pounds on and just destroyed people inside too. So Jonathan Allen, I have him as my number 3 inside player. But depending on your scheme, if you're a 3-4 team, you probably have Allen higher than Solomon Thomas. And if you have a 4-3 team, you probably have Solomon Thomas higher than Allen. So it's going to be based on what that team's needs are and what that team's scheme is. Now, my 4 guy I have here, Malik McDowell. And Malik McDowell, as far as talent level, he's right up there with all of these guys. His problem is he's gotten labels of being lazy, uncoachable, not dedicated. These are all major red flags. So Malik McDowell, he's one of those guys that, depending on where he gets drafted, honestly, he reminds me a lot of how Chris Jones was last year when the Chiefs got him in the 2nd round. And everyone knew, hey, Chris Jones was a first-round talent. But he ultimately went in the 2nd round because of those same labels, so being lazy, uncoachable, etc. So Malik McDowell, his skill level is probably in that top 15 rounds, or top 15 picks, excuse me. He's probably going to go in the late 1st, early 2nd. If a team like Atlanta could steal him, man, that's like found money for the Falcons there. But Malik McDowell, I think his big thing is he's going to be more of an inside rusher, in a 4-3 playing a D tackle, but he certainly can play the end. I mean, Malik McDowell, his versatility is very, very high. I think he might have a slight edge at being an inside D tackle, but frankly, guys, none of this matters. If a team says, hey, this guy's not coachable and he's not dedicated, then it doesn't matter where his scheme versatility is. My final guy I have here went down to the state of Florida. I found Caleb Brantley. Now, Caleb Brantley, as far as his talent, is off the charts. He's kind of similar to Malik McDowell. He has the skill, but the problem with Caleb Brantley is he only plays in about half of the games at the University of Florida for injuries. Now, when you play defensive line, you're going to be hurt every play. Every play, you're hurt. Not every game. Every play, you're going to be hurt. You're going to get a guard smashing his helmet into your wrist. You're going to get headbutted. Every single play, you're quote, quote, hurt. So that's my big concern I have with Caleb Brantley. If he's hurt in college, he's definitely going to be injured in the NFL. Now, that said, very, very, very good inside player. So he's one of those guys that, we talked about not having a lot of zeros. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a zero technique, but if you're a team who runs a lot of stunts up front and you still run a 3-4 and you ask him to play a 1 tech, I think Caleb Brantley could do that. Now, again, the problem is the guys who are playing that 1 and the 0, those are the guys constantly getting double teamed, constantly being physically handled. So if you're a guy who gets a lot of owies and you can't play, Caleb Brantley is a bit of a concern. But his skill set is definitely there in my top 5 mix. I think about a guy like Dominic Easley with the Patriots drafted him, and he never could stay right in the NFL. So Caleb Brantley, he could be a huge, huge uprise, but he could be a big miss. I think he's probably in that second round mix, maybe even into the third round, just because of his lack of durability. Now, I had to throw in my my don't sleep. My don't sleep guy for the interior, Tanzel Smart from Tulane. Now, Tanzel, he's one of those guys, he's going to go very, very late. He'll be a fifth round or later draft pick. However, Tanzel played in all 14 games his freshman year at Tulane. Then he started the next 3. He was a 2-time All-American Conference Player of the Year, his junior and his senior year. Tackle for losses through the roof. Sacks through the roof. He does everything you want. His problem is he's a little bit sawed off. He's a little short. You can tell here by his arms, not exactly very long. He's pretty powerful, but he actually has really, really good hands. Ultimately, I think Tanzel, he's pretty much exclusive going to be a 4-3 tackle. He doesn't have the power you really would want him to play as a nose or a 1 or a 0 and a 3-4, and definitely doesn't have the speed to go outside. I think Tanzel is going to be one of those guys down the line. He's probably going to have a long NFL career, hopefully for him, and he's probably going to be a career rotation guy. But he'll be a rotation guy to kind of get some, interior pressure. Tanzel Smart would be a great, great draft pick if you're a 4-3 team, just looking for another guy to kind of give you a body and give you some interior pass rush. So, guys, that's kind of my my slideshow I had here. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a little bit. But I think it's really important that we're always aware, guys, that defensive line, more than anything, your scheme is going to predicate where these players get drafted, more so than where all these experts are ranking players right now.
Yeah. 2 guys that I'm curious about, 2 guys that I was considering putting on my list, but I didn't. You have Jaleel Johnson of Iowa. He's a guy that kind of plays with good technique, solid interior pass rusher, and another guy that killed it during the workouts, Combine and the Senior Bowl, Montavious Adams of Auburn. So, what are your thoughts on those 2?
Yeah. So both of those guys, honestly, are right there at 5 for me. Yeah. I put Brantley just above him because I think his upside is much higher than those guys. I mean, when we talk about defensive linemen who come from Iowa, or most players really honestly that come from Iowa, usually they're all solid players. Doesn't mean teams know they're good. Solid.
Davis, just immediately comes to mind.
Exactly. Solid players. So, I think he'll end up being a solid player, but he'll probably be a career rotation guy. Nothing wrong with that. Probably going to be in that late second, early third round. And then, I'm sorry, Adrian, can you remind me, which guy are we talking about from Auburn?
Montavious Adams.
Montavious Adams. So he's going to be one of those guys, kind of like Tanzel Smart, but I think he's going to be drafted obviously much, much higher, probably in the third round. Interior pass rusher. I really like his motor, really like his energy, but he gets moved a little more than I would like for an interior guy in the run. I mean, he's stout and he's powerful. He holds his own. But I want to see a guy who's making TFLs and who's standing up guards, not a guy who's holding his own +2 yards, going the other way.
Yeah. I do like Brantley. You know, you talked about him. Obviously, I have him ahead of Johnson and Adams as well. Now, I believe he's like 295 pounds. Is that correct? Does that size kind of limit the scheme he can play in?
Well, I mean, it definitely limits him from going outside, which is fine because I don't think that ever really was going to be his cup of tea because he's not exactly fluid in his hip enough and quick enough to really win outside on the rush. So does it limit him? Yeah, it does. I think that's probably a large reason why I think he'll ultimately be best in a 4-3 playing that D tackle role, or if he goes to a 3-4 team, he's just got to learn, hey, your job is pretty much to stand up that center and make things work in interior.
Yeah. All right. As for the Eagles, really not a need at defensive tackle. You just acquired Timmy Jernigan, swap of third-round picks. You got Fletcher Cox. Bo Allen injured right now, but he's a solid rotational guy. So I don't really think the Eagles really need to draft anybody. But I will ask you this, since I know you know the Ravens very well. What are your thoughts on Timmy Jernigan?
I mean, so Timmy Jernigan, he was one of those guys when he got drafted to Baltimore, he was asked to go and play D-end, and he did a very good job there. I think ultimately he's going to excel in a 4-3, especially when he's going to be next to Fletcher Cox, and hopefully he'll be on the same side as Brandon Graham, so he'll be kind of more singled up with the guard. I think he actually is going to be a great fit there. My favorite thing is, from the Eagles, you got him in a try-me deal. I mean, you essentially said, hey, you got 1 year, man. Show me what you got, and then we'll determine what we want to do. I think the Eagles in the draft, I would still draft the D tackle, probably in the 4th, 5th, 6th round in that range.
I think Denzel Smart pick.
Denzel Smart would be a great pick. Fits the scheme, has a motor, and most importantly, he's going somewhere with a great D-line coach where he can continue to develop. I think that'd make him a good pick.
Yeah, and as we know, Jim Schwartz gets a lot of tackles when it comes to sack numbers, and Jernigan obviously is a solid pass rusher rushing inside. So, I can't wait for that combination. But then again, I couldn't wait for Benny Logan and Cox to play together, and Logan kind of disappointed me last year. So we'll see what happens this year. New guy, Timmy Jernigan's in there now, so we'll see. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, look, there's a reason that you made the trade, right? I mean, it wasn't because you're like, this guy would be a good backup. No, you made the trade because you said, hey, Logan's gone. We need to replace him right away. And, I mean, the other thing, too, with what Schwartz likes to do, he likes to rush pretty much his 4D linemen, doesn't love to blitz more than that. But to be fair, he gets a ton out of those 4D linemen. So if he's able to get, 5 to 6 sacks from Timmy Jernigan, and then you figure another 5 to 6 right there from Brandon Graham, I mean, right there you're almost at 20 sacks because you figure as long as Fletcher stays healthy, he can be close to 10 right there. So that could be a really, really special situation for Timmy Jernigan at the Philadelphia Eagles next year.
Yeah, and you think about how many times Cox was getting double, triple teamed even last year, and Logan couldn't capitalize. So Jernigan is going to get a lot of those one-on-one situations, and I would say he's going to excel. We'll see, though.
Oh, certainly. That's why we do this. We're talking about everything in a perfect world situation. We don't live in one, so we'll see how it goes.
Anything else on the plate? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, Adrian, unless you want to kind of maybe give a little mention of what's going on Sunday.
Oh, yeah. We're going to have a mock draft, and it's going to be awesome. Right after we finish the show, we're actually going to, put teams in a hat and actually put names in a hat. And, I don't know how to describe this, but basically we're going to have 5 guys. I'm not talking about the burger joint. We're going to have 5 guys, and we're going to do a mock draft, and we're going to go through the picks, and I don't know how to explain this, but each of us are going to have a team. And when the picks go down, each of us are going to pick. Say I get number 1, right? I get the Browns. I would make that pick. Say Brendan gets number 2. Say James gets number 3. He would pick. So that's how we're going to do it. We obviously have no idea who we're going to pick in advance. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait for this on Sunday. And and we'll get our positional rankings done before Thursday as well. So we got linebackers and we got the secondary to go. So we should get those in. And can't wait, man. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Really dynamic, really exciting stuff. And this is going to be as close to you guys are probably, anyone is ever really going to be at being in a draft war room. You guys are going to be able to see, okay, well, my thought process was maybe I really wanted Jameel Adams, but he's gone. Okay, now my plan 2 is this. So we're really excited about it Sunday. We'll make sure, guys, that we post it everywhere we can when the show is going to be live, so you guys can, watch it live and tell us how terrible our picks are, but enjoy it with us too.
Yep, that's what it is. That's Brett and Albert. I'm Adrian Fetke.
Thanks, guys.